Welcome to the Seahawkers Podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers. This week on the show, we're going to be talking to Michael-Shawn Dugar of The Athletic and the Seahawks Man-to-Man Podcast. Michael-Shawn was at the owners' meetings down in Arizona last week, so we'll get the scoop on what he learned while he was down there. Also, we're going to be talking to Sam Marcoux, host of the Perfectville Podcast. We'll be talking about the changes of the rules to make pass interference calls reviewable and get his thoughts on the Dolphins offseason and their continued quest to replace Dan Marino. And if you're waiting for Adam Emmert to jump on, well, we're doing our show together now via the Field Goals Podcast. To subscribe, visit SeahawkersPodcast.com/subscribe and find the links there to subscribe through your favorite podcast app. Now, let's get to the interviews first. We bring on Michael-Shawn Dugar coming off a week of travel down in Arizona. Mike, how are you?
I'm all right. Just got back from Phoenix. Thankfully, the weather's kind of the same over here. I like it.
Yeah, how was that? You're down in Phoenix with the owners' meetings down there and got to have some breakfast with Pete Carroll. What did you take away from that meeting?
I actually had a weird exchange from him to start the meeting because I sat next to him. I said, hey, man, how you doing? Did you have some breakfast this morning? Because there's a whole buffet of breakfast behind us. All the coaches eating there, Ron Rivera, John Gruden, everybody, all the owners, not the owners, but the coaches are there, media's there. Hey, man, you get some breakfast? Small talk. He's like, nah, I didn't eat breakfast yet. I go, oh, man, it's the most important meal of the day. He's like, oh, not necessarily. I'm just like, wait, what?
What?
I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, it depends on when you start the day or something like that. I was like, that's weird. And then then the rest of the whole thing started. But yeah, it was off to a very awkward start. It's like, what time does Pete Carroll start his day?
Yeah, and so what if you start your day before breakfast, then what is the most important meal?
I don't know. We really could have got deep philosophically about the most important meal of the day. Thankfully, we did not, because that would have just been kind of boring for everyone else.
Well, I was going to ask you, man. Earl Thomas, no longer a member of the Seahawks. You were a big Earl Thomas guy. How are you doing?
I'm glad he gets to come back to Seattle for a game, but I'm selfishly excited about that because I'm a defense guy. I really like I like good football, and I think good defense is essential to good football. I don't think you can just have games that are 50-40, every week, and that counts as a good football game. I think you need both parts to be good, and with all these elite quarterbacks and elite receivers and elite running backs, you would need equally elite pass rushers, linebackers, and defensive backs to make it all work. So Earl made it all work in a way. It's not a ton of elite safeties right now when you really think about it. It's Earl. I think Derwin James is going to be elite. The guy in New York, Jamal Adams. I think he's really good. But there's not a lot of elite guys on the back end like that, both laying hits and playing center field like that. So I really just appreciated his talent. It'd be if the Seahawks had Aaron Donald and let him walk. No, man, make that work somehow.
I got the sense that they could make it work as long as they were going to be willing to pay him. Did you have any sense? I'd never bought the idea that him giving the middle finger to Pete Carroll on the sideline was the end. I felt like it was just a matter of paying him what he was worth. If the Seahawks would have paid him, do you think he would still be in Seattle?
Oh, yeah. If they would have paid him what he's worth. But I think that because they had let him know they weren't going to pay him what he's worth, probably let him know that in about June.
Sure.
Before that, you're correct. The middle finger wasn't it. It was what led up to the middle finger that was the final straw. For Earl, the final straw was probably whatever he got from his agent in June or May, right before he posted that he was holding out. Whatever they told him then, look, you think you're worth this? We don't care. Whenever he was told that was it. The Seahawks had decided we are done with Earl Thomas after this season. No matter what the price tag is. I think maybe the middle finger, what that did, and then the holdout probably made it so that even if they were thinking about maybe changing their mind and paying him what he was worth, they were no, God no. We'll move on we'll do this Tedrick Thompson thing without you. It's fine. We're not concerned. They should be concerned, but it doesn't sound like they were.
Do you think it's going to be Tedrick? Do you think he'll be the guy going into this next year, or I don't know what other option there is other than we have the draft coming up in a month. Could go there.
You can draft a starting safety.
Yeah.
You can draft literally any starting position. But I don't think that that's one where you need a guy to sit behind another dude for a little bit. To be honest, I don't think any of those positions are like that because of training camp and the preseason. I think if you're good, you can come in and start right away if there's a spot open. You know, we just saw Trey Flowers, a 5th-round pick, grab a starting job. Right? We saw Shaquille Griffin find his way, even though he was a 3rd-round pick, find his way into the starting rotation, 4 games into that 2017 season? Like, if you're good and there's a spot open, you can play any spot, whether that's left tackle or right tackle or center or whatever, right? So, I mean, they can find a 4th-round guy to be a starting free safety as a rookie. I mean, I think Tedrick was drafted in the 4th round.
Right.
Didn't start right away, but I don't think you have to think, okay, if we draft a guy in the 5th round, he's a project. Nah, man, if he's good, you throw him in there. You never know what happens. You know, there's undrafted. Trey Flowers, was the running back in Denver. I know the running backs are a little different.
Philip Lindsay, yeah. He was undrafted, dude. Yeah.
Undrafted, I think he made the Pro Bowl, right? Like,
right.
If you can, if the talent is there and there's a spot, you can expect a starter there. And it's better if you get him in those 4th, 5th, 6th rounds anyway, because then, you know, you got a bargain deal better than if you are going to hit in the 1st round, you need him to start, I think, for a lot of positions. As maybe like if you're how the Chiefs did it with Mahomes, maybe you don't. But like you need that guy. They needed not Jamal Adams, Derwin James to be the guy. You know, the Colts needed Quentin Nelson to be a guy. I think he was a 1st-round pick. If whoever takes Nick Bosa needs him to be the guy. You know, you need that. You don't need it in the 4th round. It's just nice to have.
You don't have to worry about it because the Seahawks aren't going to have a 1st-round pick anyway. They're going to trade out of it and they'll be picking in the 2nd round, and we won't have to pound our table for a guy to be starting drafted in the 1st round.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. This is going to sound weird. I'm not a big fan of late 1st-round picks, if that makes sense. Like if you're in the top 10, that means your team's probably bad. So yeah, you should get like a super stud.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you should just expect like, okay, we need a stud.
Yeah.
We are lacking severely at some area where we need a stud, whether that's quarterback, defensive end, something. But if you're picking like 25th, chances are you were okay. You know, your roster is probably all right. 26, so the Seahawks had a couple times. We're at 21 now. I think the player you get from 21 to maybe about 39-ish, you can probably expect to get a similar type of player, you know, if that makes sense. So I'm a fan of, if you're at 18 like they were, yeah, trade back a bunch of times and get 3 or 4 dudes that you can get in the 4th round, 5th round and hit. Because when you hit on those, the hit can just be, in the 6th round, a hit is a guy who makes the team, right? Like in the 1st round, whereas in the 1st round, a hit is a guy who, yeah, and you almost need like a Pro Bowler if it's top 10.
You know, and the interesting thing is the Seahawks have actually done pretty well with that when they've had picks in the top 15. You know, Earl Thomas, you have, was he top 15 or he was at least top 16?
I think Earl and Bruce and Okung were
those
all
are the
top
3.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all top 15 picks.
Yeah, and outside of that, yeah, haven't really been too many memorable 1st-round dudes.
Right, but they're hitting in the back end of the draft. Obviously, they've had misses in the back end of the draft, but, you know, for every, like, you know, Alex Magoo that doesn't ever make the team, there's a Chris, not for everyone, but like, okay, you have Alex Magoo, but you also have a Chris Carson and a David Moore, you know, and a Jacob Martin, who I think will be a 6th-rounder.
And that's really rare, too. I mean, it's so unusual to get guys in the 6th and 7th rounds.
Well, the draft is so random, but yeah, it is hard to do. But the payoff is way better than the payoff for like Sonny Michel is good for the Patriots, but it's not nearly as good as the payoff for Trey Flowers is for the Seahawks. Even if Trey doesn't turn into a Pro Bowl talent and Sonny Michel does, you just take what you're paying them versus what you're getting from them in terms of production for their 4 years. I think they're in the same draft class. And the Seahawks, that'll be way better value. So that I would look at, like, you want Treys. Obviously, if you hit on some Tyler Lockett's and some Frank Clark's, I think they were both in the top 70. If you hit there, I think Shaquille was even like number 90. That's cool. You know, that's good. You got to pick eventually, right? You don't want to be stagnant day 1 and 2. But I think the Seahawks have been like successful, like post 2012 in terms of the draft by finding those late round guys, save for that like 20 2013 draft that was just god awful.
Well, with regard to the draft, the question does come up. Is there a limit to how far we're prepared to drop in order to trade away from our first round pick? At what point do you say, okay, that's enough?
I think if you could, let's say they have 21. I think if they dropped all the way to like 30, wherever they got Malik, I think Malik was at 35.
Yeah.
I think if you drop that far back, that's probably about right. That was the top of the second round. And I think to get there, you're going to have to trade back twice and add, probably 3 picks doing that, I would think. Probably, maybe even 4. I think they added 4 before getting Malik. So I think probably right around there. You want to get someone on day 2, but I think even if you only get one guy, and then end up taking like 6 dudes on day 3 and hitting on 2.5. Yeah, I'll take that draft. Whereas instead of we have all this pressure on this guard we took at 8 or this receiver we took at 19, we can sit back and really get value, because the draft is all about getting value as much as it's about getting good players.
How do you feel about receiver? Because you wrote about the Doug Baldwin, and it kind of feels like they don't seem to have much use for receivers over the age of 30 years old. Jordy Nelson came in, then he retired. What do you think that means for where Doug Baldwin's at in his career?
The thing is, I say there's only 2 people who are undefeated, Floyd Mayweather and Father Time, right? So you're not going to get start turning up your career at 30. You're just not. Like, that's why the Steelers are just like, look, AB, we paid you already. Your AB, you use 31? And he's like a rare talent. Yeah. And I think Doug's really good. And I would like to have him on the team. I think he's an important presence there. Not even just like the cliche, like mentor the young dudes. I just think like Doug gives guys hope in a way, and he's motivation. And I mean, not just for receivers. A guy like Poona Ford uses Doug as like an example. Like, that's what I could be as an undrafted guy. Chris Carson, similar. There's one more person who was undrafted or drafted late. That like, if Doug could do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
It's not that he's just all like away from the team, or he's just like a random undrafted guy. His locker's just over there, and that's important for those guys. They need that hope as much as it's like, oh, they're in the NFL, they made it. And you would think like, what more motivation do you need? No, those guys, they do need it. They need to, a Kyler Murray may need to see that a Russell Wilson can do it to give him that confidence, to be shorter QB, just like Russell needed someone like Drew before him, to see it. But these guys are getting it from someone like Doug, who's right then and there. He has that killer instinct that you need to be a UDFA or maybe a late round pick like Chris or like David. But in terms of the NFL is all about what can you, it's not, I don't think about the joke is or cliche, what have you done for me lately? I think it's about what can you do for me right now? That's really how I look at the NFL. And if you're 30, which I don't think is that old, but in football, you're a grandpa, and you're having 3 off-season surgeries on 3 different parts of your body within a few months, already coming off a year where your knee was betraying you in a way you're not used to. We all know how that story goes. Like this, it's not like Adrian Peterson, that dude was made in a factory, right? Like Earl broke his leg twice and I think he'll be fine. Whereas like when your body's just telling like, okay, now it's one thing. Okay, now it's another thing. Now it's another thing. Like in football, I don't believe you get healthier. I don't. Not if your job's to get hit all day. You get worse as time goes on. So I'm really worried about Doug and that whole position for them.
Yeah, the weird thing is that I've never had that worry about Doug until this offseason, because I just remember like Bobby Engram in the Matt Hasselbeck days. And Engram played until his mid-30s and played well. He had 2-3 1,000-yard receiving seasons from Hasselbeck. And so I just always pictured that role in my mind for Doug Baldwin. And so now with all the talk about, him possibly retiring, the surgery's kind of catching up to him, it feels more of a shock to me.
Yeah, because, and I think those guys, the guys we're seeing now like that are done in terms of like Seahawks. I think we just like, we have just a not short-term memory, but like we associated them almost like playing forever when they won that Super Bowl. Cause I think that was the youngest Super Bowl roster to ever win one. I think it wasn't even close. And just imagine like this is going to be a thing forever. And like no one really slowly declined. They all just kind of either was really good and then got hurt and it was over, and he just got shipped out of town. Like there wasn't no like slow decline. So I think they're all going to feel like that. Like with Bobby's just going to eventually probably just not be able to make tackles. Right. And it's just going to like blow our minds. It's going to like hurt our hearts. I think Bobby will like last a little bit longer than other guys at that position. But yeah, eventually whether it happens slowly or like drastically, he'll just not be able to tackle. He'll be like, what's going on? Richard Sherman at some point will just start getting toasted like Darrelle Revis did on his decline. And they'll be like, oh my God, who is that? And it'll hurt us. Michael Bennett won't be able to get to the quarterback. He won't be able to do a sack dance because, he may have like bad hips by then. I'm with you. I think that's what, not just Doug though. I think we might have that association with a lot of those guys from that era because they all were so good, so young, and it almost like, man, this will never end. And then it's the NFL's like, no, this will end. And it's going to hurt when it does.
Okay, I don't like where this conversation is going, so I'm going to change it up. Let's go back to the owners' meetings. Other than your awkward interaction with Pete Carroll about the most important meal of the day, what was your big takeaway from those meetings?
That the NFL is going to continue to be reactionary in terms of rule changes.
Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily think is bad because like the word precedent exists for a reason. Right, like you have something, it sets like a precedent, almost like I think of like law. I'm not like a lawyer or anything, of course, but there's a precedent case to explain why we're going to do something this way. So with the Saints play in the NFC title game, now Sean Payton's like, look, I want replay and I want it now. And then some guys in the room were like, sure. I think it was a 31-1 vote.
Wow.
I think I heard that somewhere like radio or something. I'm not really sure. I don't even know how they were getting all 32 votes because I wasn't told there was anyone from Seahawks ownership there. So I don't know who was voting on their behalf. Yeah, I was told Jody wasn't there, and I was told that I think the president's name starts with, I think it's Chuck something. I don't think he was there either, so I don't know how that works. But so will always be reactionary. I think that was something that kind of stood out to me. Otherwise, it seems like just regular old boring football talk, to be honest. I went there thinking we'd be able to sit in on like some of these debates or something like that, or we get to cover the discussions. It's like, nope, they go in this fancy ballroom and we just stand behind the velvet rope watching for them to come out and go to the bar, and we get like 5 seconds of like paparazzi time with like Sean Payton and like Jason Garrett. I'm not a fan of the overtime proposal, for what it's worth.
Wait, what overtime proposal?
Kansas City had the overtime proproposal, like how they felt like they got kind of robbed of like a fair shot at winning that game.
Everybody gets a chance to score.
Correct. I'm not a fan of that one. I think that got shot down. But I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan of that. I think if your defense allows the other team to go 75 yards with the game on the line, your team, that sucks. Have a better defense. You're like, it's not like, it's defense is part of the game too. Actually, not part. It's half the game.
Right.
So I think, if your team gives up 75 yards, because it's not like it's a field goal like it used to be, like if you give up 75 yards and a touchdown with the game on the line, then yeah, man, you lose.
You deserve to lose.
I was arguing with Seahawks fans about it, and then the NFC title game popped into my head, and I was like,
yeah, why would Seahawks fans want, after that score by Jermaine Kearse, for Aaron Rodgers to march out back on the field and be like, okay, well, let's see what Aaron Rodgers can do now.
Yeah, it's like, no, man, now you guys want rebuttals? No, rebuttals are bad. You should just have a good team on both sides of the ball. Then both units will feel confident going out there and quote unquote winning the game for their team. I think those are the kind of two big, if I had to have takeaways from the owners' meetings, other than the fact that the NFL knows how to throw a good cocktail party with open bar and a seafood bar. That was great. I had a lot of shrimp. Guy I was with ate his weight in crab legs. It was ridiculous. Those are probably my 3 takeaways there.
The biggest takeaway is the food, the bar.
Oh yeah, free food, free unlimited seafood bar.
Hey, you make that trip every year now.
Yeah, that was my first time going, and now if Steve Cohen, our managing editor, if he asks me like, "Hey man, you want to go to owners' meetings?" Sure. Yep.
Of course. Every time.
I said I didn't want to go to the Senior Bowl because that was in like Mobile, Alabama. And I was like, I don't want to go to Alabama. It's like, you want to go to Phoenix? Absolutely. Yeah. I think the spring meetings change every year. I think last year was in Orlando. Wherever it's at, as long as it's not in like Buffalo, then I'll go.
All right. Well, we got a question from the chat room for you, Michael-Shawn. Cocktail of choice.
Oh, man. I said cocktail bar, which it was a cocktail party, but I went like full on back to my Wazoo days, and I was just like knocking back like Miller Lights and.
Wait, this is a fancy party, and they're serving Miller Lite.
they had like they didn't have a ton of beers. Actually, the beer I had, it was called like Kifter or Kilt. Oh, Kilt. I had never had it before. I think he said it's like a local. I had like, the number I had doesn't matter, but I did that's all I had. And I'm like a real weird beer drinker. I like to drink out of the glass, but instead of pint glasses, because it was that type of fancy place, they only had wine glasses.
Oh.
So I was drinking beer out of wine glasses all night, and I probably looked really fancy, whereas almost like, nah, man, I'm just drinking a brew. Don't mind me. Because they had the cocktail party the night before the 8 a.m. breakfast. So it was like, man, I got to be responsible. I can't just oversleep. My hotel was like 25 minutes away, and I can't be hungover, smell like vodka, sitting right next to Pete Carroll. Right. So I had to like behave accordingly. I'm sure my bosses are happy to hear that.
Well, the Seahawks are into free agency, and what do you think the best move they've made so far is?
Not overpaying for someone.
Right.
That's really
unless it's for Earl Thomas.
Because then that's not an overpay.
Right.
That's like
that's just paying appropriately.
Yeah. And that's paying your own guy.
Yeah.
Like if you pay your own guy, I will understand. But free agency is not. I wonder how many teams are going to figure this out. It's not the NBA. It's like it's more like baseball. And it's like, yeah, we could have Mike Trout, we could have the best player in the world, and we can still not win a division. With playing Mike Trout $500 million or something like that. So by avoiding that and realizing that is the best strategy to go, and not like succumbing to the pressure, because like teams can like do that. Like, man, all these teams are getting better. This team got that guy. This team got that guy. I've learned kind of being around more front office people that they're not unlike the fans in that way. They see a guy and think, how like fans, when someone hits the market, I'll get tweeted, or I'll tweet Bob or Greg and be like, hey, you think we could get insert guy who just got cut? The GMs think like that too. Like, oh, Adrian Peterson's free. Could we get Adrian Peterson? Or, Ndamukong Suh's free agent. Oh, would that be a good fit? Like, they have those thoughts. Mm-hmm. But the Seahawks, even if they do have them, they don't go, yeah, let's give Landon Collins $80 million. No, man. Don't do that. They're like, oh, let's give Le'Veon Bell $40 million guaranteed or whatever he got. No, man, we should not do that. We should draft Chris Carson and pay him $500,000 and run him into the ground, and then draft another Chris Carson 4 years later. That's bad for the players. It sucks. That's why they should strike in the CBA. But because the Seahawks have recognized that that's the best way to do business, they'll always win the offseason like that if your priorities are taking care of your own guys and not overpaying. As long as those are your top priorities, I think you'll continue to be a good organization, even if you don't like hit gold in free agency with the low cost guys you do get.
Yeah, the biggest amount they went out and spent on a free agent was a kicker, and it was a dude who was on the team in the preseason.
Yeah, and it was a guy who was like all pro.
Right.
He made the Pro Bowl. Yeah, like Jason was one of the best kickers in the league. Yeah, he's a Pro Bowl guy. It's just like, I don't even like kicking. I don't think field goals, you should do it. But if you're going to pay a guy, yeah, sure, man, go spend cheap on a kicker, So I think the Seahawks, they have that model. And you see some other teams like that too. Dallas is behaving that way.
Indy too. Man, a lot of people expected Indy to go out and spend a bunch, but really they get Justin Houston just because he happened to come on the market. And
I think there's someone from Seattle running things over at Indy. Ed Dodds maybe or something like that. There's some former personnel guy from Seattle now in Indy. It's not their GM, but it's someone who is like in the inner workings, like a former scout or something like that. Because if you remember, Indy was grabbing a bunch of Seattle dudes like right away. I think they got Desir. Preseason. Yeah, they got Pierre Desir. They had they claimed Cyril Grayson last year when he got cut. I think they had Glowinski for a little bit.
Oh, they re-signed him. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a few like little moves, and you look at their roster and be like, man, there's a lot of former Seahawks on this roster. They might have tried Kason Williams too, I think, for a second there last year or in 2017. Like, so yeah, it actually, when I put it all together like that, no, it doesn't surprise me that, they decided, look, we're not going to do the overpay game. We're going to spend wisely. Although I think they paid Funches a little bit too much. I think that's who paid him.
Right. That was their one guy that they paid. Yeah. Yeah. That was an interesting move. 1 year, $13 million potentially. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. I think you can get out of that. You know, it wasn't like I thought the Landon Collins deal was bad, but good for that agent, that Mulligeta cat who represents Earl and Landon. He kind of reset the safety market by himself. So kudos to him, because that's his job.
So is there a move that you look at out there in the NFL and you go, you know what, I wish the Seahawks would have made that move?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, from the free agent moves, probably not. You know, other than obviously Earl, with the Ravens did with Earl. Other than Earl, guys are on the market for a reason. You know, so I don't. Weren't any good trades I can think about? You know,
well, the one trade that jumped out at me was the one, the Oakland trading Osemele. They trade him to the Giants. They swap picks. Yeah, okay, that's kind of ringing a bell. I don't think anything Oakland does the Seahawks should want to do. They weren't in a good trade market. They do need more picks, but I don't think they had anyone worth giving up. To another team, unless you wanted to trade Doug. That would probably be about it. Doug, no, I don't. Oh yeah, my bad. I can't think. I think they played this right. They played this about as well as they could have, I think. And just getting another guard if you're going to lose Sweezy. You figured you're going to lose Mike Davis. If someone was going to pay Justin Coleman that, more power to him. Yeah, nothing they did really surprised me. I didn't think they'd bring back KJ. So that actually was a little surprising. Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, that's how you should do it. You should be cheap, stay cheap, and take care of your guys who know your system and your coaches, and go from there. And then draft well. Yeah. This only matters if you draft well. If your draft sucks, none of this matters. Osemele went to the Jets. It was the other New York team. So thanks to the chat room there. Yeah. The Giants made a couple of trades. I know that they did trade. They traded their offensive lineman to Cleveland. That's what I was thinking of that. Yeah. Deal. Okay. Some folks are asking if there's anybody else left out there as a free agent that you're looking at the Seahawks. You know, they've reportedly brought in Nick Perry, a couple other pass rushers, Aaron Lynch. Any moves that you're looking at the Seahawks, you know, where they could build in free agency still? I wouldn't mind the Perry move. I think that's about it. Yeah. Everything else, you just got to draft well. The draft is so much better, just use of your resources, because of where you can get a dude in the 7th round and only have to pay him like $800,000, and it can be your starter. You know, like that's like, obviously you have to plug holes, but anyone who's available in late March, you can get probably in July or August, right? After you feel like, okay, we didn't hit like we needed to at receiver in the draft. So now we sign Jordy Nelson or something like that. Or now we go get a Brandon Marshall. Or now we go get a Des Bryant. You know, there's no reason to do that in late March or early April. If that guy's unemployed now, he'll be unemployed then too. You know, there's no rush. No matter how many leaks to Ian Rappaport there are about teams that are interested to him. No, they're all just going to wait, just like you are. Michael-Shawn Dugar of The Athletic. Appreciate you coming back on the show. Is there anything that we can, what do you got working on The Athletic that we can look forward to? I have a story about Russell Wilson coming, I think this week, because we just had our year anniversary at the Athletic. My year anniversary personally is not till May, but our Seattle site launched, I think, a year ago exactly today. We're doing like a big like blitz week of where we all drop feature stories about stuff. I have one coming on Russell. It is not what you guys would think. It's a little obscure. I'll use the word obscure because my vocab's limited right now. So yeah. I will go with obscure. It's not the traditional like Russell thing you would think of, but I have been working on it for a little bit. Pretty excited about it. All right, good tease. Well, we'll look for that and subscribe to The Athletic. It's a great site. I enjoy going there because and looking at words without seeing ads and pop-ups all over the place. It's good stuff. Yeah, I read somebody else's site. I'm not going to say what it was. It was the first time I had read somebody else's site in a while, and I kept the pop-up ads and videos. I was like, wow, This is why we like market our product this way, because it really is infuriating to keep clicking out of stuff just to read a 400 word ESPN, CBS, all those places. It wasn't any of those for what it's worth, but I do love our site for that, and that's not even me being a company guy. It is just nice as a consumer. Yeah, and nice and clean to read. It's great. So, Michael-Shawn, always appreciate you making time to come on the show, and we'll look forward to more Seahawks offseason news from you. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks again to Michael-Shawn Dugar. Follow him at Mike Dugar on Twitter. He is verified, so look for the blue check. And subscribe to The Athletic for all their Seahawks news, along with any other sports teams you follow. Before moving on to our next interview, Mother's Day coming up next month. Father's Day coming up in June, and Fan Chest is a great place to go to get the ultimate gift box for sports fans. Go to seahawkerspodcast.com/fanchest by April 10th and get 10% off your first order. Every box includes a golden ticket where fans can win VIP experiences, signed memorabilia, and more. 17% of every sale helps go towards supporting the show. seahawkerspodcast.com/fanchest or seahawkerspodcast.com/support and click on the link there. Next up, we welcome on Sam Marcoux, co-host of the Perfectville Podcast. Always talking Dolphins on that show. Sam and I, we don't get to talk all that much because the last time the Seahawks played the Dolphins was on opening day, maybe 2-3 years ago. So these are two teams that unless we play each other in the Super Bowl, we're probably not going to be seeing them play except for every 4 years or so.
So it stands the reason we'll talk every 4 years, because I don't know if it's ever going to line up for the Miami Dolphins and Seattle Seahawks to be in the Super Bowl the same year. But
it's possible. It's possible every year, though, Sam.
Well, maybe for you guys on your end right now, but for the Miami Dolphins, maybe in about 3 years we'll have that conversation.
Well, I do want to talk some Dolphins offseason with you, but first let's talk a little bit of rules changes, because we went a little bit back and forth on Twitter this last week because the NFL decided to institute replay on both calls that occur, pass interference calls, as well as ones that aren't called. So you can go back and actually challenge whether or not there was pass interference on a particular play. And I don't know how I feel about this, Sam.
Well, if you're a Seahawks fan, and if you're listening to this, most likely you are, I would say hunker down on the couch or at the actual stadium, because you guys have Doug Baldwin, which means virtually every single pass play that the Seahawks run next year is eligible to be challenged one way or the other, because Doug Baldwin is the biggest offender of OPI I've ever seen or experienced in my life. So the one part of this, jokes aside, is that it is going to extend the game a little bit longer, which I'm a Miami Dolphins fan on the West Coast, Brandon. This game started at 10 o'clock in the morning for me. At this point right now, even without this rule, the games aren't getting over till 1:30 or 2 o'clock in some cases. You're going to be well into halftime of the afternoon games, of the Seahawks games here on the West Coast, before the Dolphins game even gets over. So it is going to extend the game a little bit further. My other concern is that we are 1 degree away from being able to challenge a challenge. I mean, that's how close we are getting to just the ridiculousness of instant replay or challenges in the NFL, in my opinion.
Well, it does bring up one kind of one thing that we have to worry about now. And if I'm a coach going into next season, I'm not using my challenges now on whether or not somebody catches the football.
Right.
I'm saving my challenges to when I'm going to need them if a team commits pass interference or not, because those are going to be the most valuable challenges, ways to use your challenge now. The one thing that I am excited about as a Seahawks fan is that it seems like every other defense runs these illegal pick plays on the Seahawks, and they never get called against the opposing team for Seattle. Well, now we can actually challenge those offensive pass interference. So that I'm kind of looking forward to, but I'm also seeing whether or not, the Golden Tate catch for the Hail Mary, that in fact he did catch that against Green Bay, that would be a reviewable play now. And yes, he did push off before he caught the football for a touchdown. Is that going to be a play with those Hail Marys where everybody's kind of pushing and trying to get toward the ball? How are they going to call those exactly? Are they going to have to do offsetting penalties every time that you have a play like that? How is this going to be implemented is one of my biggest concerns, because there's so many different. You go back to, there was one call toward the end of the game for the Falcons and the Seahawks where Sherman and Earl Thomas maybe get there a little bit early, but Julio grabs Sherman's face mask coming off the line. So where exactly are they going to begin looking at that play and whether or not there was an illegal contact? Well, illegal contact doesn't even count. It has to be pass interference. So it's kind of curious.
Well, and to your point, I mean, if you got people, especially at the end of a game in a Hail Mary situation where you got basically both sides pushing each other, I know it's within 2 minutes, so maybe that's a bad example, but I mean, in theory, you could have both sides, both coaches on either side of the field challenging each other. I mean, you could throw a flag and say, hey, I think it's OPI, and you could throw a flag saying, I think it's DPI. I mean, how does that work? Like you said, is it offsetting? Or if you throw a challenge flag on if somebody caught the ball or not. Let's just say, and I'm just picking on him because it's easy, but let's just say Doug Baldwin catches the ball and the defense wants to challenge that. Could you challenge the catch and possible offensive pass interference? Or if they rule that, you know what, he caught it, but he did push off, but that's not what you're challenging, so that's not really up for review. I mean, do they have to put blinders on? How is that implemented? I think you're right. There's some questions that still need to be answered.
Well, and that's probably one of the good reasons why this is a 1-year change. Yeah. So you can kind of see how it ends up being implemented. I think there is a time component too but I also like the idea of getting things right. Because, you know, the reason why this all happened, right, was because of the NFC Championship game. And if Nickel Roby-Coleman doesn't get there too early and totally level that wide receiver, then we're not even, and the Saints go on to win that game. We're not even talking about that. Shoot, even if that happens and the Saints are able to pull it off in overtime and actually drive down and score and keep the Rams from scoring, then we don't even have to worry about this.
No, you're absolutely right. And I just worry, especially in the division that the Miami Dolphins are in, and you know who up there in New England, who figures out loopholes and ways to pervert the spirit of the law and just go to the letter of it. This is going to be used and abused somehow, even within a 1-year time frame. So I'm almost wondering, does it make more sense? I mean, could you not? And now we're going the way of the argument of baseball, where do you really need umpires, or could you just handle it with robots and technology? Could you not just have this come down from the booth based on replays and say, the field judges missed it, we're calling a flag from New York, and move on from there?
Well, and that made the most sense to me, is that having somebody who can simply say, yeah, drop the flag, and you don't have to worry about it even in all the 11 o'clock games where they say, well, there's too many games going on to have somebody, centrally do that. That's fine. If it just is on Thursday night games, Monday night games, Sunday night games, the games that everybody's watching, and especially in the playoffs, then just do it for those games. The playoffs are probably the most consequential. Shoot, they were talking about that rule of both teams getting the ball and having that limited to the playoffs and being overtime rules, and they end up tabling that particular rule. But if you're going to make rules that are different from the regular season to the playoffs, then you can make rules that are different for different types of games in different situations.
Yeah, but then you are basically telling some games, like the Browns-Bengals game that's happening, buried in the middle of a Sunday morning.
They're not important.
It's not
they should know that.
I would agree. And you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, the state of Ohio should just know that in general. Still, I think you can't separate that from a Thursday night to a Sunday morning. Although I do like the idea, because we've had for many years different rules for the playoffs than you had regular season. Why not add another level of scrutiny to the playoffs? It does make it a little bit different and maybe a little bit more special. And maybe that's the advantage of getting to the playoffs, is you have this additional challenge. Or if you're going to do it for a year, I understand, trying it for a year. Why not just try it in preseason and give preseason at least something interesting to watch, other than the fourth stringer that's going to be bagging groceries in a week? I mean, maybe try it throughout the 4 games during preseason, and then vote on it after the season to be implemented the next following year, regular season. I don't know. Maybe we need to tippy toe into this thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. I never understood why there's not more rules being tried in the preseason of NFL, because those games don't matter. Even all the teams know that those games don't matter. So try all the cutesy types of things that you want to try out and see how it works and go from there.
Get crazy with it. I mean, add something where maybe the opposing team can actually rotate the uprights one way, 90 degrees once per game, or maybe you turn a 30-degree angle into the field. Just see what happens. Maybe somebody can run, a fly route, but on a 30-degree turn to the left, it's really a flag route. That's a fly route. I mean, I would just try all things you could in the preseason, then just say, just kidding, August 28th, here we go, regular season. But yeah, try it in preseason, or fully commit to it for the playoffs. But I don't know about just having this rule. I think it's going to slow down the game. I think personally, I'm leaning towards this being a dumb rule. It would be a catfish rule, if you will.
Well, I'm not so concerned about the rule itself. It's going to be the implementation of the rule going forward. And you mentioned Bill Belichick. This is something that he's been pushing for years and years and years, of making every play reviewable. So it does make me think that he has plans in mind of why he likes this.
Yeah, something tells me the owner of the New England Patriots is not looking for every play to be reviewable, considering his offseason at this point. They might be having a change of heart there in New England at this point.
I don't want to review any of the footage that Bob Kraft is involved in. That should be non-reviewable.
It gives new meaning to a pulling guard, if you know what I'm talking about.
All right, Sam, the Miami Dolphins, they've had an offseason.
That is true. That is a fact. That is a statement of fact. They've definitely had an off season.
How are you feeling about things are going? Ryan Fitzpatrick, the new quarterback of your Miami Dolphins.
Fitz magic, and he's got, we're happy about it here on Welcome to Perfectville, Chris Cullen and myself, because we already have one Fitz magic in Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was our stud rookie safety cornerback, jack of all trades last year. And now we have the OG, if you will, and Ryan Fitzmagic himself, Fitzpatrick. We're hoping that at halftime they actually come out and do the Fitzmagic show. I mean, that would be the most entertaining thing about Miami Dolphins football in 2019/2020. I'm okay with it. And look, we knew we were going to have a Band-Aid quarterback. We had a segment on our show called Name That Band-Aid, and we were just going through all the different options. And when you're talking about Teddy Bridgewater, when you're talking about, potentially Joe Flacco, or bringing back Brock Osweiler, Ryan Fitzpatrick all of a sudden doesn't look that bad. I mean, we all know what the Miami Dolphins are doing in 2019. The owner has come out and said it. The coach and the general manager won't say it, but they'll kind of do it with their fingers crossed. We're in rebuilding mode. We're tearing everything down. We're buying draft picks for future years. And if you're going to do that, you might as well lose in entertaining fashion. And if nothing else, Ryan Fitzpatrick brings a level of entertainment to the Miami Dolphins fans everywhere that if we're going to lose, at least we'll do it with a smile and a beard on our face.
Well, and that's the interesting thing to me is that if you're setting your team up to lose, I don't know if Fitzpatrick's exactly the guy to do it, because you can lose with any quarterback behind center. If you wanted to lose spectacularly, bring back up Brock Osweiler or just Luke Falk, your backup quarterback, put him in there game to game. But it is the entertainment factor that you're going to get week to week, and you never know what kind of clothing Fitzpatrick's going to show up to for his press conference.
I'm always like, if you follow hockey and there's a goalie that's given up 4 goals in a period and all of a sudden they pull him because he's having a bad day, I feel it's going to be the opposite in Miami. If all of a sudden Ryan Fitzpatrick gets hot and throws for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns by halftime, you'll see Luke Falk, or they will just pull Brock Osweiler out of the stands. They don't want to win more than 4 or 5 games. I mean, they're setting themselves up to try to go ahead and get a franchise quarterback in 2020 without having to trade up. But if you do become competitive, if you do win some games, they have about 10 or 11 draft picks for the 2020 draft right now that they could package those and trade up and still go get that quarterback. So there is a plan, although the plan is to probably lose quite a bit, Brandon. At this point, we're okay with that because the plan has never been to lose in Miami, but that's the plan that keeps coming up. So at this point, you might as well embrace the loserdom that we've become in South Beach and just lose as many games as possible. If you win a couple along the way, great, hopefully against the Jets and the Bills and the Patriots. But at the end of the day, if you get there and you have 7 wins on your record, you can still trade up and go get that quarterback. So I'm okay with that plan because it will make us entertaining during, before, and after the game. And we still have some draft capital to trade up and go get that quarterback next year if need be.
Well, I do like it because it is a plan. And I've always kind of thought about, some of those teams like the Detroit Lions, like they have their quarterback with Matt Stafford, but it's also been shown that he can't really, once he gets into the playoffs, he's not winning games. So how many years do you have to go before you decide, okay, this isn't our quarterback to get us over the top, to get us to the Super Bowl? And so seeing that the Dolphins have made that decision and now they're free and clear to rebuild it kind of the right way and go after the, similar to what the Browns are doing. They were terrible for so long, but finally they got a general manager who knows what he's doing, put him in the position, and they draft a quarterback number 1 overall. They have the pieces kind of built from the draft that you can see there's a plan there now. And that's kind of what you would hope for. It's kind of weird to say that as a Dolphins fan, but you want to be in the position that the Browns are in now a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, that's how you know your franchise has fallen on dark times, when you're looking up at the Cleveland Browns going, let's model our franchise after them. Let's do what they're doing. And it's funny that you say Matthew Stafford, because I'm a Los Angeles Dodgers fan, as you know, and Clayton Kershaw, what you just described for Matthew Stafford as being the talented stud quarterback, franchise player who can't get it done in the playoffs, is exactly what it's like with Clayton Kershaw with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And ironically, or coincidentally enough, Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw grew up together, went to the same high school, and played sports together. So it must be something in the water in Texas that prevents them from doing something beyond the regular season. But you're right. I mean, Ryan, at this point, we all thought we all hoped Ryan Tannehill would be that guy for the Miami Dolphins for, 12, 15 years. He's not. Whether it's due to inconsistency, whether it's due to bad coaching, whether it's due to injuries, my sneaking suspicion that it's all three, it was time to move on from him. This year, there really was no quarterback. Quite frankly, we probably should have done this last year and seen if we could go get a Kirk Cousins or some of the other quarterbacks that were actually available that you could technically build a franchise around, but we didn't. We waited a year. We delayed. Adam Gase apparently tried to go get that Matthew Stafford last offseason, couldn't get that deal to the finish line, so we moved forward with Ryan Tannehill for another year, knowing full well that he basically was a seat filler. I mean, at that point, Adam Gase had no other choice but to use Ryan Tannehill as much as he could. But we had to move on. And you're right. It is a plan. It's not a great plan. It's never fun to be like, hey, we're going to lose for a year or two before we try to get better again. But that's what we have to do because it's not working. I mean, we're still paying Ndamukong Suh to go play football for the Rams. We're still paying Robert Quinn to go play football for the Cowboys. We're paying Ryan Tannehill to go not play football for the Tennessee Titans. Right now, we're paying a bunch of these veterans to go away. And really, I thought it was quite ingenious. Chris Greer, our GM, he's really just buying draft picks. That's what he's doing. He's trying to get as much capital as he can so that he has some flexibility this year and next to move up and down the draft board and start stockpiling, hopefully, talent that can contribute soon.
But again, I think as a fan, I would rather be bad for 1 or 2 years than to be average for 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. 100%. I mean, 8 or 9 would be a blessing. I mean, the problem for the Miami Dolphins is that they have been mediocre. Now, they finished last year 7-9, Brandon. I don't know if you know this stat, but up until they lost that last game, I mean, they were, whatever it was, 64-64 or whatever the actual record was.
Right.
So they're now 2 games behind 500 because they went 7-9 last year. But that is the very definition of mediocrity when you are perpetually an 8-8 team every single year. You can't get good and you can't get bad. You're just stuck in limbo forever. So fall to the bottom and rebuild that foundation from the ground up.
Well, Sam, really wanted to thank you for coming and joining the show in the off season, and follow you on Twitter at Perfectville Pod, at Tiger Comedy for your personal Twitter. And you've got a comedy show coming up here in Pasadena on April 6th.
Yeah, April 6th, 7:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. at the world-famous Ice House Comedy Club. I'll be down there throwing those jokes, probably talking about football at some point, because that's what I do when I'm on stage. So you can always find me there, or you can find any of my shows. I tend to promote them on all those Twitter feeds that you just talked about. And I want to thank you, Brandon, real quick, for having me on when Adam is not in town. I really do appreciate that. This has been very pleasant and not hard for me to talk at all. Usually when Adam's on here, I feel like I need to put everything on mute, but the show is much better, much smoother. I think your fans, the Seahawkers out there, appreciate that.
Thanks, Sam. And well, you know what? Adam and I will be back, though. We're going to be talking a little bit later this week. We'll be on the Field Goals podcast and talking about, just some of the news. Well, one of your favorite guys from the Seahawks, Doug Baldwin. He's been in the news these last few weeks with some of his injuries, but I'm really hoping that he sticks around at least for a couple more years until we get to play the Dolphins again.
I think Doug Baldwin is a lousy wide receiver who is a big cheater, and you should trade him to the Miami Dolphins immediately. We could use him.
Would you? Well, he might actually be a good pairing with Fitzpatrick, actually.
Yeah, that'd be an entertaining press conference, if nothing else.
Thanks to Sam Marcoux for joining the show. Thanks again to Michael-Shawn Dugar for joining us earlier. If you want to help support the show, visit getintheflock.com, and you'll get a shout out the next time Adam and I are on together on the Field Goals podcast. We're planning on doing a show sometime this week together. Also, while I'm saying thanks, how about a thanks to all of our members of the flock in at $12 and above at getintheflock.com.
Keith Ketover, a.k.a. Flocktimus Prime, University of Cybertron, Little Flockers, roll out.
DCH from Sparks, Nevada, the University of Montana Grizzlies.
Annalisa Mickelson, a.k.a. Mrs. Doug Baldwin, New York, New York, undergrad, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, graduate school, Brooklyn College.
Eric Trench, rooting for the Seahawks out of Renton, Washington, graduated from Eastern Washington University.
Gary Blum from Chappaqua, New York, and the University of Pennsylvania, your 2016 Pick'em League champion.
Ron Pepper, UNLV Runnin' Rebels, San Francisco, California.
David Bloomquist, Hong Kong Hawk. Ma Sheng Yishu She Ye.
Kevin Stenjum, Keene, Texas.
Ella Esparza, Woodway, Texas. Yale University and Sam Houston State, Eat 'em Up Cats.
Lisa in Seattle.
Sam Sullivan from the wonderful land of Oz, the Forsyth State University.
Paul from San Diego.
Vincent Parker, Emily Carr, University of Art Design, RN Collective.
Hector Delgadillo from Los Angeles, California.
Samuel Jackson Gelber, the Pasadena City College.
David Van Cleve, Camas, Washington, home of the Papermakers.
Mark in Kirrup, Western Australia, aka my water spins backwards. Farmer, didn't finish high school.
Garrett Strongbanks, Northern Ontario, Georgian College.
Jameson Holman from Murray, Utah, representing Mississippi State University. Hail State and go Hawks.
And continuing on, if you do donate at 12 and above, please send along your voice intro, your name, where you're from, and where you went to school. Email that to gohawks@seahawkerspodcast.com, and we will work it into the show. Running down the rest of the list, an extra special thanks to Ella in Woodway for swinging into Kalispell and having a visit with Adam and I at the famous Moose's Saloon in Kalispell. It's really cool whenever we have a chance to do some kind of a meetup. So thanks to Ella for making the trip. And going down the list, Ross in Eureka, California, Christina in Manassas, Virginia, Summer in Vancouver, Sven in Berlin, Deutschland, James in Linwood, Rowan Federal Way, Kevin in Snohomish, Young in Anchorage, Becca in Manhattan Beach, California, Tim in Austin, John Paul in Palmer, Alaska, Kathy in Eureka, California, Joshua in London, Christian in Bergen, Norway, Brandon in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, David in Moore, South Carolina, Jonathan in Ridgefield, Thomas in the Bronx, Craig in Pasco, Glenn in Sanford, Florida, Jared in Missoula, Montana, John in New York, Pepper in Greenville, South Carolina, Don in the Pacific Northwest, Paul in Minneapolis, Seth in Tacoma, Keegan in Colorado Springs, John in Pierce, Nebraska, Kari in Rochester, Brian in Berlin, Connecticut, Owen in Ashburn, Ireland, Gary and Tracy in Kaneohe, Hawaii, Jeffrey in Kansas City, Eric in Seattle, Jeff in Waddell, Arizona, Dean somewhere in the Greater Hawkdom, Connie in Gothenburg, Sweden, Taylor in South Cleellum, Ryan in Sugarland, Texas, Eric in Clovis, California, Ryan somewhere in the Greater Hawkdom, Marvin in Riverdale, Utah, JC in Billericay, UK, Lisa in Kelowna, BC, Scott in Fresno, California, Shannon in Florida, Andrew in Marysville, Washington, Bryson in Eltopia, Shoko in New York, John C. somewhere in the Greater Hawkdom, Mitchell in Roseville, California, Greg in Seattle, Ben in Wrexham, UK, and lastly, John Master Guns, somewhere in the Greater Hawkdom. A big thanks to all of you for helping to continue to support the show month in and month out. And that does it for this week's show. If you haven't checked it out yet, Rob Staten and I, we did a draft show on the Field Goals Podcast. Again, go to seahawkerspodcast.com/subscribe. And you will get the latest episodes through the Field Goals Podcast feed. And of course, continue to subscribe to this show because I will be putting out shows at least every other week during the off season. So continue to follow here, follow us at Field Goals. And with that, I think there's only one thing left to say. Go Hawks!